Yo, Adam,
Yes.
do you like meters?
I prefer yards, feet, inches. I'm an imperial kind of guy.
Okay, sorry, I said that wrong. Do you like the meters?
Oh, like the meaters, like folks who are into a carnivore lifestyle. That's also not for me.
You're
No.
weird.
Well,
I'm talking about this.
oh, like New Orleans supergroup The Meters, funk icons of all
Yes.
time. Yes, of course. I love The Meters, yeah.
And I'm Peter Martin.
And you're listening to the You'll Hear It podcast.
Music Explored.
Explored, brought to you today by Open Studio. Go to openstudiojazz.com for... Oh, your jazz lesson needs Peter.
Are you okay with the drum roll?
Nice drum roll. I like that.
You were looking at me.
I was waiting.
You may be self-conscious. I went single stroke roll.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you do a double stroke
yes,
roll?
I can.
With your...
Tune in next week for double stroke rolls for Peter.
You heard it here first, folks.
You have a small bird on you.
It is
a small Charlie Parker on you.
It is a cardinal.
A cardinal.
Representing the St. Louis Cardinals, which is my favorite professional sports team of all time.
I'm familiar with their work. Are they still professional? Boom, boom.
Barely.
Stay next
if there
week.
was a regular, if we did, what is it, relegation, like they do in like the Premier League, they would be.
They're in a rebuilding stage, but it's all good. Man, I'm so excited today.
Me too, man.
We are talking about, is this a provocative title? The greatest funk band of all time? Did I overstate this?
No, I think that's a perfectly fine title, especially because there's a question mark. Listen, there's no greatest anything, but if you're going to put a conversation of the great funk bands of all time, how can you not include the Meters? It's got to be in the conversation.
I mean, James Brown is the first thing when I see a title like that we're like, hold on now. James Brown, Sly the Family Stone, a lot of folks.
Parliament.
But I think that, the unique thing about the Meters is like they really infused the New Orleans sound, the ethos, the culture, the feel into beyond just funk, but just into American popular music. Of course, New Orleans music has always kind of been the foundation of rock and roll, R&B. You can see a lot of that. But I think, we're going to kind of look at like 1966 through 1976, sort of, a rough estimate of the time period of when the Meters were really having their influence, their initial influence. And I think that there's sort of a through line all throughout American pop music that, knowingly or unknowingly, got that New Orleans vibe, that street beat, that flavor through the funk and through the music, that just the authenticity of this band, the Meters. So I'm excited.
Yeah, they're just the greatest. So what are we starting off with here? Are we going to start with, it looks like you have Alan Toussaint written down here as your first place to start with talking about the Meters music.
Yeah, Alan Toussaint was really just a giant of New Orleans music, New Orleans culture. He produced a lot of the Meters music. A lot of it was recorded at his studio, kind of from 1972 or 73 on. I got the chance to know Alan, to work at the great C. Saint Studios, and to kind of be part of that up until the early 90s when things were still rolling.
So where should we start?
Well, let's go back to a little bit of Professor Longhair, who is, a lot of folks know about him, a lot of folks don't. But he's sort of the foundation and the bridge between the oldest style New Orleans sort of piano stuff. But I think we're going to hear it going all the way up into the way that the Meters played and stuff. This is Professor Longhair on one of his great versions of Tipatina. But what you hear in that, is like, it's not funk yet, but you get that boom, boom, gong, 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 that rumba.
It's not funk, but it is funky.
It's funky. It's funky and funky. And it's got that New Orleans thing. It's got that Caribbean thing.
Oh, my gosh.
All the stuff. So a lot of the, Alan Toussaint, who's going to be a huge name that we talk about, the producer of the Meters and really the one who put the Meters together, even though he wasn't in the band. Great keyboardist, legendary, engineer and studio owner and producer and sort of architect of modern New Orleans music. But you got James Booker, all this stuff going all the way up to Harry Connick and stuff. But Art Neville, one of the founders of the Meters, definitely was listening to Professor Longhair. So the first track I want to play from them is Cissy Strut, which is like, everybody knows this, but I think you're going to hear the connection a little bit. This is 1969.
Yeah.
My first introduction to the Meters, I just now realized, I was like, where did I first hear this? Because I don't think my dad had any Meters records, but It was the DVD for the Quentin Tarantino movie Jackie Brown. Did you ever see Jackie Brown?
Yeah, sure.
So the load screen, I believe it was Jackie Brown. It was either Pulp Fiction or Jackie Brown, but I think it's Jackie Brown. The load screen was Cissy Strut.
Oh, that's
just
so awesome.
on like a minute-long loop.
Yeah.
And I would just have it playing, just the load screen in my apartment.
Right.
As I just smoked a bunch of Marlboro Reds.
Oh, Reds. You went with the Reds.
Yeah.
Nice.
I should have just bought a Cissy Strut CD. I don't know what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's that sound. And I think what we're going to see is like, there's like, so if we check out, this is Zigaboo Modeliste, who's, really the founder. He's the drummer. He's, Joseph Modeliste. And I mean, he's such a iconic figure, often copied, never duplicated. But this is just the drums on Cissy Strut. I mean, it's funky, the backbeat, but that hi-hat. But that's one of the most, kind of famous funk drum grooves the drummers try to play that people love. And this is Zigaboo, kind of what he was talking about, how this groove came about.
For the information I wanted to display, I tried to use the hi-hat with both hands. There's at least 1,000 patterns what you could actually do.
Patterns.
Doing
That's
that,
New Orleans.
mixing it up. So this to me was a direct assault on the hi-hat.
Direct assault.
And being able to interact in a more aggressive way and to get more flavor out of simplicity.
Okay, mission accomplished, Zigaboo. More flavor, a direct assault on the hi-hat, But the last thing he said...
So he's talking about playing the hi-hat with two hands.
Two hands.
As opposed to usually you would just play it with your left hand.
And I see a lot of drummers playing with just, which can work, for sure.
Yeah.
But it's that originality. Like, just the way, like, there's so much New Orleans in what he was just saying. Direct, like the way folks talk, the way they play.
Yeah.
It's so unique.
Can't disassociate the culture from the music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so, like, out there in your face for New Orleans in such a beautiful way. It's so... Like he said, it's a direct assault, but he said, the last thing he said was simplicity. And this is sort of a lot of people look at their way that they played funk as very complicated, but there's actually a lot of space. There's a lot of opportunity for things for the sunlight to go shine in different places in the quartet. This is George Porter Jr., the bassist, talking about space.
It was always like we had learned by them from doing the sessions that we have been recording, Lee Dorsey sessions with Alan Toussaint.
Yeah.
Which was almost about probably close to a year before we started recording our own stuff. If we would have had to do that Cissy Strut before we actually had done those sessions with Alan, we probably would have played. We probably would have played that because we would have been busier. But playing the sessions with Alan and then doing the Lee Dorsey things, it was like he used to always say, it's not what you play, it's what you don't play.
Yeah.
So playing with space was essential.
So that's, really coming from Alan Toussaint in terms of like how he produced, how he informed them in the, because basically like from like 65, 66, 67, the meters weren't even called, they started calling themselves the meters, but first they were the kind of, studios used to have like the rhythm sections and the sound. And a lot of people don't realize just because New Orleans, we get a little disorganized in New Orleans, not going to lie, sometimes with our business stuff and our storytelling. But this was what the meters were doing in 1966 with Lee Dorsey at Alan Toussaint's studio. You might have heard of this little ditty before.
Working in a coal mine, going down, down, down. Working in a coal mine, about to step down. Working in a coal mine, going down, down, down.
But they've already got that professor.
5 o'clock in the morning, I'm already
Leo
up and
Nisatelli,
going.
yeah.
Lord, I'm so tired.
So they were backing up hits, a bunch of stuff, and but they've already got that sound. You hear that New Orleans flavor, even coming out of that kind of mid '60s what is that? Doo-wop?
Yeah, who was that?
Bebop?
What was the band on that one? Do you know?
That band, that was the Meters.
No, but who's the artist?
Lee Dorsey.
Lee Dorsey.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had a couple big hits. He was a New Orleans cat. I think he was in the military and the West Coast, and then came back to New Orleans. And Alan Toussaint basically was like put the thing together, and they'd have these like regional hits. But sometimes, this was like that was like a Billboard R&B, hit.
Man.
Feels
so
Memphis,
good.
Nashville, of course, the different places, but New Orleans, Detroit, obviously Motown, but New Orleans had its own thing going on too.
Man, truly.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yep. So that's kind of moving along. So their first record, the Cissy Strut, was almost called The Meter. So like they came out the gate with some hits, and that was in 1969. So you hear the evolution already from like 66 through 69. And then they released 2 records, 2 or 3 maybe even in 69. The first being, the self-titled, the Meters. But then they had Look a Pie Pie. We're going to play some of this, and we're going to come back to it later because I think I'm going to actually alter we have our wonderful Apex moments that I'm looking forward to this because there's a lot for me. But this is also 1969, later on in the year, Look a Pie Pie. That's a hi-hat assault. So you're hearing that simplicity, right?
Yeah, the production's so good. The way things are panned.
Yeah.
Sound of the guitar.
And then this right here, this next drum break coming up right here is coming straight out of the street beats of New Orleans, layered on top of funk. Boom. That's Art Neville organ. So Art Neville, did a lot of lead vocals, although a lot of this was instrumental music, which was a little bit unusual during that time.
Yeah.
But Art Neville, we got Leo Nocentelli on the guitar. Who did we already mention? Zigaboo Modeliste, Joseph Zigaboo, of course, and George Porter Jr. on the bass. And that was the core quartet. I mean, they started adding like some of the other Neville brothers, Cyril Neville, later on, but it was really that quartet and that partnership with Alan Toussaint that over the next 4 to 5 years was just a beautiful thing, as they say.
Man, they have such a distinct sound too. And like all great funk music, like you talk about James Brown, you could talk about Sly and the Family Stone, Parliament Funkadelic. Everybody's just got their own. They're just have their own part that they're just releasing themselves to. Like you just give yourself up to the part. But I think what makes the Meter sound so distinct, of course, Zigaboo Modeliste, the complete, the loose change pocket.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's just like you can feel the beats between the beats. So it's such a huge part of the music. And then the chicken scratch guitar is just the sound of the guitar that Alan Toussaint got in the studio. That chicken.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That is super distinct to me. That's what makes it.
And Leo actually started, there's a lot of unique stuff that goes all the way back to like banjo and mandolin. Leo actually started, he was from Donaldsonville, Louisiana, which is kind of a country town, but it has its own very rich musical tradition.
It's like country funk. It is. It's
very
like,
country funk.
It's like funk for the country.
Yeah. And he started on mandolin.
Yeah.
And then when he started playing guitar, he's like, wow, I got a couple more strings. And, it's a really interesting thing. And we talk about like the drum groove. Let's check out the drum groove of what we just listened to, drums only here. Like that, boom, that secondary backbeat, right? I mean, it's so deep. It's very swampy, right? It's like you're walking along on the edge of the swamp, and then a foot kind of goes down in. A gator might get you. Yeah. And then, it's just so we talk about different music. And I think that we really can hit on something here on this pod of joy that we all share. You and I, Caleb, Bob, all the audience, everybody listening. Like when music is so directly connected with culture, with the landscape, with the food. And whether you've been to New Orleans or you haven't, if you hear this stuff and you like it, once you go to New Orleans and you go out, like go over to the West Bank, go over to Algiers, go over to the swamp area and stuff, it'll all start to make sense. Just same way, like if you grow up hearing, I remember I listened to like a lot of Bach chorales and classical music because my parents are both classical. The first time I was like, I know this stuff. I went to Juilliard or whatever. The first time I went to Germany, actually on a jazz tour, and like went into some of these churches, these cathedrals, right? I was like, damn. I mean, not that you have to go there to enjoy it, but then it starts to really come together. And I can't tell you like how how like humid this music is, how swampy
It's connected to people in that city for sure. That's amazing, man.
And then we're going to move on to 1970 now, which was a very important year, as you know. You don't know, man. That's why I didn't get a birthday card from you last year.
So sorry,
I was born
Pete.
in 70, man.
Okay.
But this year, a glorious year in the world, of course. But they had a record called Struttin'. I mean, just the words and like the sounds and the way they would look a pie, a Pocky. I mean, it's like they have their own language for this stuff. But this track, hand clapping song, when we talk about great funk bands, I think the influence on hip hop becomes very important because really up until today, but early hip hop culture was all about sampling funk stuff. R&B and different things too, but especially funk grooves, drum breaks, that kind of thing. And the
Soul
meters,
music, for sure.
Yes,
Soul music.
absolutely. And jazz stuff. But the jazz stuff is usually the funky jazz stuff, right? You're talking about like Lou Donaldson.
Alligator Boogaloo and whatnot. Yeah.
But this is hand clapping
Ronnie
song,
Foster.
which you've probably heard some of the stuff and said, oh, this way of like clap your hands now has been around forever. This is actually where it came from, 1970. Leo. Oh. Those are real claps. That's not a machine.
Clap your hands now, people, clap now. Clap your hands now, people, clap your hands.
But you've got that blues, of course.
Clap your hands now, clap your hands now, people, clap now. Clap your hands now, people, clap your hands. Clap your hands now, people, clap now. Clap your hands now.
And I think this thing too of like repetition, like that's 8 times they just did that phrase, right? Mm-hmm. Normally, a lot of times it's like, oh, don't do it that much or change something up. So remember what they said, what George Porter Jr. said, they learned from Alan Toussaint was simplicity. Like, how do you do something funky and repeat it, keep it the same, don't change anything, boom. Like there's such a value of that in all different kinds of music. But I think with funk and the way that the meters laid this stuff out, it's very patient. It's very, like, there's a complexity there to the grooves when you break them down, but there's like a commitment to the groove and the simplicity of how the stuff is laid out.
Well, the repetition becomes part of the groove. That becomes part of the relationship to what's happening is how many times it happens.
Right.
If it keeps happening again and again. It just becomes part of this conversation that's going on where it's just like, is it coming back around?
Right. And then you're waiting for it. Yeah. Very James Brown. Very James Brown too. So you got that dip, clap your hands now. Now, so the hip hop influence, we've got Tribe Called Quest. Right? We've also got the Wu-Tang.
Clap your hands now. Clap.
Shaolin in the house.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I drink till I'm drunk. Smoke skunk with my stinking ass smell the funk. Eking out the pores, come stain shitty draw.
Even Whitney Houston.
Late 90s Whitney.
Yeah.
If tomorrow is Judgment Day. Sing, mommy.
So when we talk about, that's what I'm saying, like the New Orleans, like ethos, musical ethos, the culture being, the meters imprinting that on all of popular music. That's where you start to hear, because everybody thinks that, oh, that's going back. Everybody claps their hands, but that way of doing it, that kind of vibe, that was just something the meters came up with.
Pete, when we doing our Wu-Tang, you'll hear it. When's that happen?
I mean, we could probably fit that. We could make that like a thing where we have a category. Yeah. There has to be some connection. Yeah. So how you feeling so far?
Man, I feel great. I really feel great. I mean, the whole thing is like there's certain music that is just music that is meant for a party.
Yes.
It is a party. The music itself sounds like a party. And the Meters is one of those bands that is the best party music in the world. I mean,
yeah.
Put it with anything else, Brazilian music, whatever it is you got.
You know what?
It holds up to all of that.
I'm glad you said Brazilian music. That's to me is the direct connection, not in terms of like the groove or like the harmonies or whatever.
There's a philosophical kinship.
Yes.
For sure.
Like Brazilian music, like where it's really music for the people. Mm-hmm. And you have a culture, like that's a very direct connection between New Orleans and Brazil, is that you have a culture of people that know how to dance, know how to sing, kind of across all different people that have their own thing, and that the musicians, the audience and the musicians are very connected and they're held to a very natural high level. You know what I mean? It's kind of like if you're in a food city, a bad restaurant is just not going to survive because people aren't going to be interested in that.
Right.
And that's very much the way Brazilian music is for Brazilian people. They have certain songs that everybody knows.
Right. And the connection, like it tastes, smells, looks how it sounds.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like everything is connected.
Yeah. And so what we're doing on this episode, by the way, thank you guys for being here. Are we allowed to say give a little like and a subscribe? I feel weird doing that but do it if you're liking
It's your
this.
show, man. Say whatever you want.
No, it's our show. Every week we're breaking down great albums, and what we're doing like this week is a little different. Well, it's not a little different. We've done it before, but we have a playlist, so we'll have a link to that below Apple Podcasts. Apple Music, Spotify, whatever. Because I picked out these 9 tracks because it's not to say that like Struttin or Rejuvenation, Look Up Pop, these are all fantastic Meters records, but I love them so much I couldn't be restricted to one album. And so this is more just sort of like my favorites, but I think they're also, pretty representative of sort of the lineage of the Meters and what they did. I was going to play next just a little bit. This isn't even going to be on the playlist, but just like you might know about this. This is Dr. John. 1973.
We definitely need a Dr. John you'll hear at some point.
But this is the Meters with Dr. John on his, and this is a big hit. So like what was happening with the Meters, they never really had they had some hits, but they never had huge commercial success on their own, although they did like open for the Rolling Stones. Stevie Wonder used to come to New Orleans and jam with them.
Don't forget about that Jackie Brown DVD.
I didn't even know about, like, there's all these, like, it was always kind of an insider thing, and their music is so great that it's kind of like, it's going to find its way.
Yeah, but they're one of those bands where, even if they never had like a huge smash worldwide hit, every musician I know talks about them to each other. Like we all talk about the Meters. Everybody is listening to this music who is into playing music at all. You got to go through your Meters phase for sure.
Absolutely. And, I got a chance to do a gig once with George Porter.
Hey.
At Snug Harbor in the early 90s. It was actually a jazz gig, and he was so nice and, like, just fun to work with. And he was so humble because he's like, I'm not really a jazz bassist. I was like, you're George Porter Jr. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like, and he had his little fake book, and we played standards.
Oh, come on. He had a fake book?
And I wanted to do some Meter stuff. He's like, no, we're doing all jazz stuff, He was the first one I ever saw with the teeny little, I was like, dang, the real book.
Yeah.
It was like the mini
little
one.
Pocket real book?
The pocket real book. He busted that thing out, and that was a joy. I knew Art Neville. I actually lived, when I first moved to New Orleans, I lived on Dufawcett Street, which was like a block over from Valence Street, where Art Neville, well, the Never Brothers grew up there, uptown, and I got to meet Art. Literally, like, he had moved back to the block and like fixed up this beautiful double shotgun house, and he was a great guy. Like New Orleans, like the culture and the connection between the elders and the current and the wannabes is so together. I didn't even realize what I was getting into. And it took me years later. I was like, wait, that's Art Neville from the, it's like, he was just somebody in the neighborhood. So I love those guys. But we're moving along. That was Dr. John, who had a big hit with that in 1973. And then 1974, we've got the album Rejuvenation. And this is probably, kind of the apex of their recorded output in a lot of ways, although to me it kind of kept going from here. But this has got some like really important stuff. This is People Say from Rejuvenation. Leo Nisantelli. Check out this drum groove here. But the simplicity, the repetition, and the bass. Look at you do. Art Neville. Woo! So Adam, there's something that Art Neville did there that I think we need to do as jazz players a little more. Can we get a little, I know we're not in the Nerd Nook now, but he played the same fill twice and it was killing. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, we don't do this enough in jazz. We feel like we play one thing. Check it out. You hear that line? Art Neville got the... Yeah. Although he did alter it just a little bit, And this is getting into some... a little bit of political commentary with the vocals that they... all that little elements start to coming together. And you know where we're going, Adam. We're going to the four chord. Come on now. Back to the one.
was that fill again, the piano fill.
Oh, right. Repetition. One more time to the 4. Here we go. And then this is going to be one of the greatest breaks of all time. Oh, no. It's the second time. Sorry.
Really left us hanging there, Pete.
Here we go. Wait, we're going to go. But again, but this is part of the thing. Like, they build it up, right? The architecture of this, the repetition, everything in its place. Let's check out the second time. Woo!
Hey.
Woo! And it's not even on 1, it's on 2.
It's so good, man. It's so good.
There's so many details that are like repeated. It's not like the jazz stuff where it's like, oh, that one thing, and then train went to something, which is great too. But this is like the fill. Like, and you caught it more. I didn't even realize it was that many times, you know?
It's like a mosaic. It's like this mosaic where things are sparkling and popping off in different places, and every time you listen to it, there's something else sticking out. It's great.
Yeah, yeah. So other stuff from Rejuvenation. We'll move through this a little quicker, but like you're not even quite sure where the groove is, but it's there. But then here.
Just pecking like a chicken.
Peck it. A chicken in the swamp, right? Just
Damn.
like, woo! Bass line. That's what he did. Did it again! Come on. Cause I just kissed my babe. But this stuff too in here. But I'm like, there's so much syncopation and like, it's never, cause I just kissed my baby. Yeah! You know, it's cause I just kissed my baby. I mean, this stuff is so, check it out.
I feel like a king.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I just kissed my baby. It just dances above the meter. But that backbeat is always there.
And honey, don't mean a thing to me. No.
I think he was reading this off of a staff paper.
Definitely.
Dee-boo doobie hey how.
So good.
Oh, the horns.
I just kissed my baby.
Ooh. I mean the counterpoint, the rhythmic counterpoint.
My baby. Yeah.
So that kind of thing, again, I had to hunt around because I was like, where was this? Check out a little more of the hip hop influence. See if you remember a little band called Public Enemy.
Yo, we got some non-believers out there. Yo, we got
Speed
to
it up a little bit.
about that, man. Yo, we got to get stupid. Yo, we got to let them know what time it is.
You go and I when I jump in my car, people treat me like a real
Abdul-Jabbar.
When I'm up the bar, I bet you go hip hop.
But they keep that line, that boom, boom, dee-doo, it's up like a whole step or whatever, because they sped it up. Fantastic stuff. But I mean, there's so much rich. Yeah, man, it's just, it's intense, right?
Yeah.
All right, should we keep moving along here? We're getting to we're still in 1974, but Rejuvenation. Now this to me,
You can't skip over Hey Pocky A-Way.
right? That's where we're going.
Oh, okay,
That's
great.
where we're going.
Good.
Actually, should we sort of let's jump into the Desert Island tracks because I
Okay.
think we're gonna
Yeah.
because this is actually my Desert Island track on, and the reason is like I wouldn't say A Pocky A-Way, and when you guys hear this, it's gonna be like, oh, that's the Meters. Oh, I didn't know that. That's New Orleans. Like the reason it's my Desert Island track is not because it's the funkiest thing the Meters did, the most, you know, I mean, there's it's killer funk in it. It's like, but it's kind of a combination of like their joyful stuff. There's more lyrics on this. There's more of a direct connection. This is one of those songs in New Orleans that's very much connected with the streets, very much connected with Mardi Gras, and just very much like everybody knows this there. They don't even know why they know it, whether they're music people or not. So let's check out my Desert Island track, A Pocky A-Way from Rejuvenation.
Hey.
Oh. And that's that Caribbean rumba. That bass drum. Art Neville.
So powerful.
Little bitty boy with a heart of steel.
there on the snare. Stand Zigaboo.
I'm getting hungry, man.
I know.
But it's sister show will, yeah.
He's not even playing the big backbeat. He's playing.
Music. I've been told. Good for the body. And it's good for your soul. What we doing now? Hey, 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 Pocky A-Way. Hey, 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 Pocky A-Way. All right. Get on now.
Then they add the horns. And Zigaboo's all here on the snare drum. It's a very, now you're starting to get the claps coming with the backbeat, but like Zig staying right here. Stick, bunk. Like it's a very like direct connection with the street beat, with the parades and stuff. I mean, it's funk, but I don't think any of them were in there like, let's do a New Orleans funky thing. Like it's very much from the street beat in a super exciting way. So, I mean, I love Pocky A-Way. It's like, to me, that's the joy of, like, if you were to say, what's the most joyful musical track that you want to listen to for the rest of your life? I'm ashamed to say that it would be that. Maybe Over Thelonious Monk, John Coltrane, J.S. Bach, or anything. So.
Really, really strong. Yeah.
What you got for your Desert Island track? I see you doing some scoring and some readjusting, perhaps.
I'm going Cissy Strut. I'm going classic Cissy Strut, just because, like I said, that was really my first exposure to the meters. It's my favorite meters track still.
Yeah.
It's
it's a great one.
It's a great one. Yeah.
It's a great one.
No denying that.
You'd be happy on that desert island if you had
100%
Cissy Strut, for sure.
Apex moments, Peter. What do you got?
Okay, so my apex moment is everything the meters ever did. Sue me. But if I need to be restricted to one moment, I found to me, Look a Pie Pie, the vocals on that, of which there's no actual words in that I can discern from the English language. Even the title isn't, but there's some stuff that they do. I'm gonna just play you my apex moment. So they start out there with the little vocals, but you hear that little oopa-cha, whatever. There's a break later on. Let me sit right here. Sorry, let me get to the right place.
Hey,
check out the vocals coming up. One more time, sorry. Okay, so they're doing all that stuff.
Are those guys all right?
they were all right. They're doing all that while Zig on the drums is just playing that killer groove. But check this out. This is just the vocals for the second break. The first one is incredible too, but this is my apex moment. This is just isolated, the vocals only. Check this out. Layered. Well, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
A boo boo. Wow. I mean, this stuff is just like, oh, it's so great.
Amazing.
So that's the second break. The first one's incredible too, but I only get one apex moment, so that's mine.
My apex moment, I'm going with all of Rejuvenation. Honestly, I think the album itself, for their career, I think that's the peak. Yeah. What about if there was a bespoke playlist?
Bow, bow, waka, check. I'm just going to start talking like that too. I'm not even going to speak English
just
anymore.
Bow, wow.
Bow, waka, check, wow,
that's the bespoke playlist title?
Oh, bespoke playlist. Gotcha. All right, I've got Funk Below Sea Level.
Because New Orleans is below sea level. No, I like that.
Yeah.
I have a few. I have Swamp Stank. The playlist would be called Swamp Stank. It would be a lot of meters, be a little Dr. John, maybe some Cajun music in there too. You know what I mean? It would be the whole thing. If this was an Apple playlist on Apple Music, they would, if it was in that, it would be in a playlist called Southern Nights.
Totally. Well, that's the great Alan Toussaint. He had a big hit with Southern Nights, so that would be perfect on there.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And then if this was a playlist, there was a Spotify playlist. The Spotify would call it Director's Cut. And it would be like this, some Rolling Stones.
Right.
Just some stuff, maybe some like some Ohio Players. Things you would hear in like a Scorsese, Tarantino, maybe Guy Ritchie movie.
Right.
This kind of music.
Right.
It would
The
be
Bespoke
just,
of the Bespoke.
yeah.
You
just
got to
like
know. You got to know.
the directors who appreciate funky and soul music
Right.
from the early 70s.
Right.
Okay.
Wait, was that up next?
No, that was
No. Oh, that was Bespoke playlist. Sorry.
So
Gotcha.
our up next, though, is what would come up next on Spotify.
Oh, right.
To pair with this.
Yes.
With some good stuff.
What you got on that?
I've got Parliament's 1974 masterpiece, Up for the Downstroke.
For the downstroke. Wow. Yeah,
You know, I'm a
absolutely.
Parliament guy through and through.
Yeah.
That's my band. That's who I'm most influenced by in this genre is Parliament and Funkadelic.
Absolutely.
And I love pairing stuff like that. I think they would go well together, actually.
come
Even
on,
though
man.
Parliament, you know, we talked about how Meters it's got a lot of country in there.
Yeah.
Parliament feels very like you're driving in the city.
In the city,
You
right?
know what I'm saying?
But there's some interesting intersections. So I remember seeing. Well, it was like George Clinton and the funk. You know, they started changing the thing. But like in the early '90s at Tipitina's on Chapatula Street in New Orleans, George Clinton used to come, or Bootsy Collins, or some combination of those bands, like usually 2 or 3 times a year, and they would do shows that were legendary, 3 and 4 hours long.
Yeah.
Like they started 8 o'clock, but they'd hit the stage at 10, and they'd be in there till 1, 2 in the morning. And like they had a deep love in New Orleans for Parliament, all things George Clinton, all things Bootsy, and because I mean, like that's why it's what's up next. You know, like that's a natural connection, and I agree. It's more of a city funk, if anything, country funk, but the overlap is beautiful.
Yeah, I got to open for George Clinton once, just down the street here at the Firehouse. Remember the Firehouse?
Wait,
Probably
hold on.
not. It's now condemned, I believe.
Like it.
And my girl at the time, when we met him, he just took her hand and he just, this was the 90s, by the way. Couldn't do this now. And he just licked from her hand all the way up to her shoulder.
What?
And I was like,
What's George Clinton? You
really
gotta
nice
let
to
him do
meet
it.
you, George Clinton. She was bewitched. For sure.
Okay, for up next, I've got for sure Alan Toussaint's Southern Nights, which was 1975, so that's a year after Rejuvenation. Professor Longhair, any of his stuff, but especially New Orleans piano. I mean, like that's sort of the compilation of all things Fess, and James Booker, Junko Partner, which is like from mid-70s as well, and is like kind of a manifestation of a lot of things the Meters did in solo piano, and really shows that direct connection there. You'd be staying swampy, funky, jazzy with all those.
Those are all great.
Yeah.
What about any quibble bits? Anything to quibble bit about this one? This might
Nope.
be unquibbleable.
Well, we did, full disclosure, we definitely need to talk about our attorneys at law in South Louisiana.
DeBossier and DeBossier?
DeBossier may have represented the Meters in some litigation at one point.
Yeah, of course they did.
Esquire. But we did talk about this a little before. Possibly, and this is so weak, we can co-own it if you want. A quibble bits would be like they come out doing swampy funk and that's all they do.
Yeah, there's not a lot of like different textures besides the swampy funk texture, or like a huge, you know, tonal color palette with like chord changes or anything like that. And I don't know if it needs it, man. Like that's the other thing too, is like the sort of like quibble bit is also their biggest strength.
Right.
That's why it's so good.
Right.
Is because it's just like this relentless groove that hits you. So
Yeah, it's like Mozart. All of your sonatas follow the Sonato Allegro form.
and they do it beautifully. And
Yeah.
and like you said, it's like it's the times that come around again. It's the relationship to the repetition that means so much. So I don't know. It's not really a quibble bit as much as just kind of like baked into the music. So that's tough. Yeah.
Well, actually, you know what? I got a quibble bit. They weren't allowed. Okay, so they actually were still around. And everybody except for Art Neville passed about 5 years ago, but the rest of the band is still around. And they have come together. I actually saw their first reunion, I believe it was like 91 or 92, sometimes around that time at New Orleans Jazz Fest. It was such a big deal because they hadn't all played together as a band under the Meters since, I believe, like 76 or 77.
Oh, wow.
So it was like, there was some different things that occurred or whatever, and they have come back at different parts, but they basically stopped being a band after that.
Yeah.
You know, 2 of them kept living in New Orleans, 2 of them were living on the West Coast, and they would come together, and it was always it was a huge deal when they would. But that would be my only quibble bit, is that they didn't progress past this incredible. It's kind of like Stevie Wonder. We talk about that period. We talk about, you know, different, you know, John Coltrane for certain years, and then they go on to the next period. They didn't really go on to the next period.
Yeah, but you know,
maybe it was just for that time.
Yeah, it's like neither did, like, I mean, they could have just kept making music like what, the Stones and Bowie and people like that. But like, what happened after 82 for those guys too? You know what I mean? It's like Some
About
good
$1 billion
music.
in revenue.
Okay, that's true. That's true. They did make a ton of bank, but you know what I'm saying. Artistically, maybe it's like they called it when it was felt right to call.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, could be.
I don't know. Snob-o-meter.
I mean, I think this is 10.
You think it's super snobby?
I think it's super snobby. Yeah.
I have.
Okay, I don't know. Did we see that on here? Adam just looked at me with a very rare look of shock.
Well, just because
shock and awe.
I have the exact opposite.
Okay, because our snob-o-meter is faulty.
So you think that this is an album that snobs only would love?
Well, no. Is that what the snob-o-meter is? I think it's that snobs would love it.
How snobby is the album? Is it more towards a general population or more towards like a niche snobby music nerd? You know what I mean?
So 5.
Do you think so?
It's gotta be 5. I say 10, you say 0, we gotta average it, right?
I guess you're right.
I mean, I think it's snobby because a lot of people don't know, like for some reason they're still a little bit under the radar. I mean, of course, if you're a hardcore funk.
It's party music though.
I know, but it's got these layers. It's not party music in the way that like, you know, Milli Vanilli's one record is party music. If you're having a late 80s party,
Listen,
I guess.
don't blame it on the rain.
See? But I'm saying, what's the snob-o-meter on Milli Vanilli?
That's 0.
Right. So you're going to put the meters at the same place?
I have it at 3.
Oh, you have it at 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I
so like it's slightly snobbier than Milli Vanilli. I love that that's now our criteria. Or say Whitney Houston. That would be a 0.
Would Aunt
right?
Linda love this record?
No.
Okay. Would Alan Iverson love this record?
I hope so.
Would Ethan Iverson love this record?
I think he would, yeah.
That's why I said 10. Because isn't that the snob-o-meter, Aunt Linda to Ethan Iverson?
Okay.
We need some work on that.
We need to, yeah.
Put a star
Let us
by
know
that.
what your snob-o-meter rating is, if you understand the snob-o-meter.
Someone did put a comment. And look, please, if we're getting stuff right, which we often do, please give us the compliments in the comments. If you have a quibble bit with us, please put that in the comments. We welcome those and receive those. We're very good at accepting those. Let us know what you think of this. But somebody did put in the comments in the last episode about the snob-o-meter. They said they think it's faulty. Did you see that?
Yeah, that technically it should be a 10 if both Aunt Linda and Ethan Iverson like it.
That they both get 5 points.
Which is what I suggested months and months ago, but it's too confusing to explain then.
You just explained it.
Yeah, I know, but then what happens if, I guess so.
This might make this like a 6 then. Because Aunt Linda might give it a 1.
I think Aunt Linda would give it a 3.
She'd give it a 3. And I would say, well, I'd say Ethan Iverson would give it a 5 probably. Or he'd probably give it a 4.
Probably a 4. So it would be a
7.
7, meaning that it's like a great album that appeals to both the masses and to snobs.
Yeah.
But see, I just don't like that because then you can't tell how snobby an album is, which is what I want out of the snob-o-meter. It's measuring the snobbiness.
That is inherent in the name snob-o-meter.
Because if it's 5, then you're like, well, is it 5 for Aunt Linda or 5 for Ethan Iverson?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. All right, I'm going 9.
The whole point of a snob-o-meter is to rate the snobbiness of an album.
Did you ever think you'd be sitting on a podcast saying, quote, the whole point of the snob-o-meter is to rate the album?
Buddy, I manifested this podcast. My idea was to be able to have a job where I sit and talk music with you and we discuss how snobby a thing is.
Okay.
I'm living my dream, Pete. What are you talking about?
Is it better than KOB?
No,
Kind of Blue.
It is not.
Okay. I'm going to say, now, this is a little bit unfair because this is not an album, actually. We're talking about Rejuvenation. This is a playlist officially.
Yeah.
This is a playlist. Kind of Peter's favorite meters tracks. I'm going to say it is equal to Kind of Blue.
Controversial.
Yeah. I'm going to say it's equal. And I almost, if you were to force me and say, like, tell me that I'm not allowed to do, we don't do equal.
We don't do equal.
It's better than.
Oh, no, it's not.
If I was forced off, I would say.
Okay.
For me.
Okay.
Isn't that what is this? We're not talking about the chords are better.
I don't see, is John Coltrane in the meters? I don't see that.
Well, I'm just saying these tracks to me, like if we're saying better than, do we mean better than to us just for pure enjoyment?
What do we prefer?
Yeah. I would say.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
I put it out there.
If
let me know if you agree or not. Okay. Accoutrements.
I said 9.
9. Yeah. I just said all killer.
Yeah, they're all
so
great.
That's probably a 9.
Great art in general.
They're great, and they're very iconic. You will have seen them. Caleb will have them in the episode. They're really fun. They're indicative of the period. You may have seen them, you may have not, but they're fantastic.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, listen. leave us a comment. And also leave us a rating and review on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We love ratings and reviews. We read the reviews sometimes. We're going to get back to that. We're going to be doing a mailbag episode coming up, Peter.
A mukbang mailbag.
A mukbang mailbag. So if you want to leave a speak pipe, go to you'llhear.com and leave us a voicemail. We'll be taking some questions. We'll also be reading some of your comments, including some of your suggestions about things like
that's coming up in a couple weeks.
That'll be in a couple weeks.
Should we talk about what's coming up next week, though? Can we even do that?
Yeah, next week is going to be some Bill Evans. We're going to be talking about one of the most influential jazz trios in the history of trios, Bill Evans, Paul Motian, Scott LaFaro. They were only together for 18 months, recorded 4 albums, recorded 2 of the most iconic jazz piano albums in the same day. We're going to be talking about that next week.
Was it a Sunday by any chance?
It was a Sunday. Yeah. June 25th, 1961.
Cool. And the Nerd Nook, I already know what we're going to do for the Nerd. The Nerd Nook is something exclusive for Open Studio members.
You got to be a member. It's in the hang. You can find it in the SC.
And this is for like, if you like some of the stuff we played at the beginning, we're going to play another tune in a second here too. But I did a little arrangement on that Cissy Strut. I hope it's cool with the meters. You know, I'm always like, we can't do it just like them because we can't do it just like them.
No way.
So I put some kind of chords and some rhythms. I'm going to kind of just break down those chords. They're relatively simple, although in the words of Caleb Kirby, what he told me earlier this morning, just learn it. So I think that's going to be an opportunity for me to just learn it, but to show you guys kind of why I did that. The rhythm.
I love it when drummers say, just learn it.
Yeah, that's right. So we're going to talk about that. That'll be available very soon. Actually, when this episode drops over at Open Studio Jazz in the Hang and the Nerd Nook. And so.
Cool. What do you want to go out on?
Well, let's do, first of all, give it up for Bob DeBoo at the bass laying down.
Come on.
Caleb Kirby at the
Look
drums.
at those
They're
guys.
taking this podcast to the next level.
Hello.
We appreciate you guys. Why don't we do a little bit of that, bounce, bounce, bounce.
Yeah.
Bounce, bounce.
Till next time.
You'll hear it.